A millionaire CEO humiliated a poor waitress for spilling coffee on him. But something about her caught his attention, and after discovering who she really was, he was left stunned and deeply saddened. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. On a sunny morning, the cafe in downtown Seoul was busier than usual. The aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the sound of laughter and the murmur of conversations. Haun, a waitress with a strong personality and a gentle smile, moved through the cafe, serving orders with agility and attention. Although she led a simple life, Haun was optimistic and always tried to see the bright side of things. However, her heart carried an inexplicable emptiness, as if part of her story was missing. While she was serving a customer, Haun heard a luxury car park in front of the cafe. Immediately, the atmosphere changed. Everyone looked at the tall, elegant man who entered, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. This was Kim Ji-won, the heir to one of Korea's largest companies, known for his cold temperament and intense gaze. His face was handsome, but his hard expression kept everyone at a safe distance. As he entered, Ji-won looked around with disdain, clearly uncomfortable to be there. Ha-eun noticed the tension and discomfort in the man, but rather than being intimidated, she picked up a menu and approached him confidently. "Can I help you with something, sir?" she asked with a polite smile. Ji-won briefly looked at her as if assessing her nerve to approach him so directly. "An Americano, no sugar," he replied coldly, diverting his gaze back to his phone as he typed messages. Ha-eun hurried to prepare his order, but when she returned in a moment of clumsiness, she accidentally spilled some coffee on his suit jacket. Ji-won's eyes narrowed, and he looked at her with a mix of anger and contempt. "Can't you even do your job properly?" he snapped, adjusting his jacket, clearly bothered by the coffee stain. Instead of apologizing frantically, Ha-eun looked back at him, holding her ground. She took a deep breath, picked up the cup, and responded calmly, "I'm sorry, but accidents happen. I can bring you a new coffee if you like." Ji-won was momentarily taken aback by her response. He was used to people trembling in his presence, but Ha-eun seemed unfazed. He watched her in silence, trying to understand where that confidence came from. It irritated him, yet also sparked an unusual curiosity. "Just bring the coffee," he muttered, turning away in irritation. As Ha-eun prepared another coffee, Ji-won noticed something intriguing. She wore an old necklace with a simple, delicate pendant that looked vaguely familiar. A hazy memory surfaced in his mind. A fragment from his childhood, perhaps? For a second, he thought of his sister, Soo-jin, and a vague sense of nostalgia and pain overwhelmed him. He was distracted, but soon pushed those thoughts aside, reminding himself that he had buried that past long ago. Back at the counter, Ha-eun placed the new coffee down, keeping the same calm expression, showing no regret for what had happened. She knew he was someone important and could make her life difficult if he wanted to, but her personality wouldn't let her bow to fear or anyone's pride. "Here it is. I hope it's to your liking this time," she said with a subtly challenging tone before walking away. Ji-won watched her leave again, his heart beating faster. Why did she intrigue him so? And why did he feel as though something was binding him to her? After the unexpected encounter with Ha-eun at the cafe, Kim Ji-won can't get this girl out of his mind. The way she confronted him and the strange familiarity he felt while observing her stirred something within him that he hadn't felt in years, and no matter how hard he tried to ignore it, the image of her and her old necklace continued to torment him. Driven by a growing doubt, he decides to investigate. Could this ordinary girl be his long-lost sister, Han Soo-jin? For someone in Ji-won's position, uncovering details about the life of a waitress was not difficult. He calls his personal assistant, Minho, and instructs him to find out everything he can about Ha-eun. Even though he doesn't understand why his boss is so interested in someone seemingly unimportant, Minho obeys without question. In just a few days, Minho returns with intriguing information. Ha-eun was adopted when she was still a child and has never met her biological parents. Additionally, he discovers something disturbing. Her birth date exactly matches the birthday of Soo-jin, Ji-won's lost sister. This coincidence leaves Ji-won shaken. Could it be possible that fate brought Soo-jin back into his life in such an unexpected way? Each new discovery plunges Ji-won even deeper into emotions he has long tried to suppress. Instead of backing off, he begins to feel a mix of hope and fear. And amid this confusion, something in him becomes obsessed with uncovering the whole truth about Ha-eun. At the same time, fate seems to play with them, as Ji-won and Ha-eun continue to run into each other in unexpected situations. One afternoon, he sees her walking through a park, lost in thought, and decides to follow her at a safe distance. As he watches, he notices her giving a sweet smile to a child playing in the square. This touches him in an unfamiliar way, reminding him of Soo-jin's kindness as a child. On one of these occasions, Ha-eun eventually notices his presence. She stops, wearing a confused and slightly irritated expression. "Are you following me?" she asks, crossing her arms with a challenging look. Caught off guard, Ji-won gives a cynical smile to mask his embarrassment. "This park isn't exclusive to you, right?" he replies with a provocative tone. Ha-eun sighs, clearly frustrated but unwilling to back down. "I just think you don't seem like the kind of person who enjoys commonplaces. In fact, you look lost," she comments, her tone direct but not harsh. These words leave him disarmed for a moment. No one dared to speak to him that way. She wasn't wrong, but Ji-won in his pride tries to change the course of the conversation. "I was just trying to relax, but it seems you have the bad habit of disturbing people," he replies coldly, trying to guard himself from his own feelings. But Ha-eun laughs, a soft laugh, not mocking but understanding. This laugh unsettles him, as if she can see through his layers of arrogance and coldness. "I think you disturb yourself," she says, with a subtle smile. And without waiting for an answer, she turns and keeps walking. Ji-won watches her leave once again, his heart pounding. Why was she attracting him so much? Why did he feel as though something was binding him to her? After that encounter, Ji-won plunges even deeper into his investigation, this time trying to gather more concrete evidence. He searches through old family records, trying to find clues that might connect her to Soo-jin. He discovers that, around the time of his sister's disappearance, there were rumors she might have been taken by someone trusted by the family, but the case was quickly closed on his father's orders. This information heightens his suspicions, and the mystery of Ha-eun's necklace won't leave his mind. One night, he recalls that the last time he saw Soo-jin, she was wearing a very similar necklace. He wonders if this could be the final piece of the puzzle. As the investigation progresses, he and Ha-eun continue to run into each other, and despite the constant provocations and arguments, the tension between them builds. With each encounter, Ji-won feels more drawn to her, yet also fears he may be crossing a dangerous line. After all, what if she really is his sister? One night, after a heated argument, Ji-won holds Ha-eun's arm more firmly than he should, realizing how much she affects him. She pulls away, her gaze defiant but with a vulnerability he didn't expect to see. "I don't know what you want from me, but I won't change who I am just to please you," says Ha-eun, firm, but with a tremor in her voice that indicates that, beneath her confident front, she too feels the strange connection between them. Ji-won lets her go, feeling a sudden wave of guilt. In his obsession to uncover the truth, he realizes he may be hurting someone who might have nothing to do with his past. But the doubt persists, and the more he observes her, the more he feels she could indeed be his sister. What then, he wonders, should he do with the confused feelings that have begun to surface within him? With his heart in conflict, Ji-won decides to continue the investigation. He needs definitive proof. After all, the possibility that Ha-eun might truly be Soo-jin awakens in him the need to protect her, even if it means sacrificing his own feelings. With each discovery, the line between love and a desire for redemption becomes thinner, and he realizes he is approaching a truth that could change their lives forever. As the days pass, Kim Ji-won finds himself increasingly obsessed with the possibility that Ha-eun is his lost sister. The investigation, which began with small details, has now become something much greater, affecting his mood and his daily life. He realizes he's emotionally bound to her, but not only by his desire to find Soo-jin. He tries to convince himself that all of this is simply about discovering the truth about his sister, but he begins to see that his feelings for Ha-eun are deeper and more complex than he had imagined. As the investigation advances, Ji-won feels his determination waver when he observes Ha-eun. She is independent, strong, and loyal, qualities that intensely attract him. Each time they meet, he feels a mixture of attraction and deep pain, as if he were betraying what's left of his memories of Soo-jin. He spends sleepless nights questioning what he truly feels for her. The idea that Ha-eun could be his sister consumes him, yet the attraction he feels for her is even more overwhelming. Ji-won begins to understand that in finding answers about Ha-eun, he must also face his darkest emotions. One night, Ji-won decides to take a more casual approach. He finds Ha-eun in a bookstore, seemingly absorbed in an old book of children's stories. He approaches slowly, with a hesitation that's not common for him. "Do you really read these books? I thought they were just shelf decorations," he comments, trying to sound indifferent, though with a lightness in his voice he rarely displays. Ha-eun closes the book, a faint smile forming on her face. "And why not read them?" she replies without looking directly at him. They bring back memories of a childhood that I can't quite remember. Ji-won feels his heart tighten at her words. Her childhood, too, seemed to have gaps, as if part of it had been lost. He realizes that this emptiness Ha-eun carries could be connected to Soo-jin's disappearance. Sensing this is a moment of vulnerability for her, he softly asks, "Ha-eun, do you remember anything from when you were little? Any special memory? Something that makes you feel close to a family?" She sighs and, with a sad expression, glances down at the necklace she wears around her neck. She touches the pendant delicately, and Ji-won feels a chill run through him. That pendant is identical to the necklace he gave Soo-jin when she turned 6. "I remember a song that someone used to sing to me," begins Ha-eun, her gaze distant. "It was about a star. I don't know where this memory came from, but sometimes I sing it to myself. It makes me feel like I belonged somewhere." These words hit Ji-won hard. When they were young, he used to sing a lullaby about a star to Soo-jin whenever she was afraid of the dark. That long, buried memory returns with force, and he cannot hide the pain in his eyes. "It's a beautiful memory, Ha-eun," he murmurs, barely able to hide the despair growing in his chest. They share an intense look, but Ha-eun quickly looks away, visibly uncomfortable with the intensity of the moment. Without understanding the reason behind Ji-won's emotions, she tries to change the subject, but the discomfort lingers. After that encounter, Ji-won realizes he needs definitive proof. He can no longer bear the uncertainty about who Ha-eun truly is. He decides to go to his father's old office to look through documents from the time of Soo-jin's disappearance. In a forgotten box in the back of a closet, he finds an adoption report for a girl found the same week Soo-jin disappeared. The date, the place. Everything matches what he knows about his sister's disappearance. Each piece of evidence reinforces his suspicion that Ha-eun is indeed his lost sister. His heart breaks as he realizes that the intense feelings he developed for her have now transformed into a devastating burden. Even knowing she is his sister, he can't ignore the attraction he still feels. The moments they spent together, the exchanged glances, the unspoken words, all of it tortures him. The next night, unable to bear the weight alone, Ji-won decides to tell Ha-eun the truth. He invites her to meet him in a quiet spot, far from the bustle of Seoul. They meet in a park by a lake, lit only by streetlights and the gentle glow of the stars. Ha-eun senses the seriousness in Ji-won's gaze and feels the gravity of the moment. Without understanding what she's about to hear, she approaches him, both anxious and uncertain. Ji-won takes a deep breath, hesitating, but finally begins to speak. "Ha-eun, I discovered things about you. Things you might not know about your past." She stares at him, surprised and confused, but stays silent, waiting. "You were adopted, right?" he continues, his voice almost a whisper. "You never knew your biological parents?" Ha-eun, with a sorrowful look, gives a slight nod. "I found out that, maybe, you are my sister," he finally confesses, his voice breaking. Ha-eun is paralyzed, unsure of how to react. The thought strikes her like a shock. She tries to process the words, but all she feels is a profound confusion. She's felt the connection between them for so long, but never could have imagined something so devastating. "This can't be true, Ji-won," she murmurs, her eyes filling with tears. "And what does it mean? Everything we felt." Ji-won lowers his head, unable to look at her. Everything he wanted, the reason he had spent weeks investigating, now destroyed him. Ha-eun, in turn, feels as if her identity has been stripped away. and everything she thought she knew about herself and Jiwon falls apart. Still devastated, Ha-eun pulls away from Jiwon, unable to bear the closeness. Everything they felt, all the moments and emotions, now transform into a heavy shadow. Without another word, she walks away from him, struggling to hold back her tears and trying to process everything. Jiwon watches her disappear, feeling an emptiness he never imagined he would feel again. The discovery that should have been a redemption became his worst nightmare. Now, both are left broken, each carrying the pain of feelings that should never have existed. And as Ha-eun disappears into the darkness, Jiwon wonders if they will ever be able to forgive each other and move on. After the painful confession in the park, Kim Ji-won and Ha-eun try to cope with the devastating truth that has come to light. Both are in shock, experiencing an emotional roller coaster, and despite their need for distance, they feel bound by an uncontrollable force that links them. With nowhere else to turn, Ji-won decides to finally confront his past and seek answers that might clarify the mystery of Soo-jin's disappearance. If Ha-eun really is his sister, then how and why were they separated? And why had his father never mentioned anything? Driven by the urgency to uncover the full truth, Ji-won returns to the family mansion to confront his adoptive father, Kim Dong-hyun, a powerful and authoritarian man. He knows that his connection to Ha-eun only makes sense if there's a concrete reason for their separation. During a tense conversation with his father, Ji-won asks direct questions, revealing the discoveries he has made about Ha-eun and the similarities between her and Soo-jin. Initially, Dong-hyun tries to evade his questions, but upon realizing the seriousness and determination in his son's eyes, he decides to reveal a truth that has been buried for years. Dong-hyun admits that, in fact, Soo-jin had been adopted by another family, but that this happened as a decision made by his late wife, Ji-won's mother, who was deeply shaken after Soo-jin's birth. She feared a supposed family curse that had affected past generations, leading them to tragic fates. Despite Dong-hyun's objections, Soo-jin was left in the care of trusted family acquaintances, who later abandoned her, and she ended up being adopted by another family that renamed her Ha-eun. He then explains that over the years and after his wife's death, he gave up trying to find Soo-jin, convincing himself that her disappearance was, in some way, a blessing. Ji-won's heart shatters hearing his father's cold and cruel account. To him, it is unimaginable that anyone could separate their own children and forget a child who should have been protected. His eyes fill with fury, and he feels a profound disappointment that shakes his core. For the first time, Ji-won sees clearly the calculating and heartless man his father always was. Now, he knows he has been betrayed, not only as a son, but also as a brother. Hearing this story, Ji-won decides he must tell Ha-eun everything. Even if it causes more pain, he understands that she deserves to know her true story and the reason for their separation. With a heavy heart and a mind full of confusing thoughts, he goes to the cafe where she works, waiting for her shift to end. Ha-eun sees him and, though hesitant, knows she needs answers as well. In tense silence, the two walk to a nearby park, where Ji-won tries to summon the courage to share what he has uncovered. Ha-eun, I found out why we were separated, he begins, his voice low and heavy. Our adoptive father. He and my mother made that choice. They were afraid of a supposed family curse and left you, thinking it would be better that way. Ha-eun stares at him in shock. Her eyes fill with tears, and she feels a whirlwind of emotions: pain, disbelief, anger. Her whole life she had sensed gaps in her story, but never could she have imagined it was the result of such a cruel choice. Everything she thought she knew about her past now seemed like a lie. So, I was rejected? My own family abandoned me because of some ridiculous superstition? Ha-eun's voice falters, and she presses her hands to her chest, trying to contain the suffocating pain that overwhelms her. Ji-won, not knowing how to respond, simply watches her, feeling utterly powerless. He tries to reach out to her, but Ha-eun pulls away, as though needing to process the revelation alone. How do you think I feel, Ji-won? You and your family lived a life full of privileges while I lived without answers, not even knowing who I truly was. Her words are broken by the tears now streaming down her face. Ji-won feels guilt burning inside him. All he wants is to protect her, but the words he has shared seem to have only hurt her further. He tries to hold her hands, but Ha-eun, still devastated, pulls back once more. Ha-eun, I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted you to suffer like this. His voice cracks, and he realizes that there are no words capable of repairing the situation. The feeling of rejection overwhelms her, leading her to make a difficult but inevitable decision. Desperately needing to find peace and understand her own identity, she decides to distance herself from Ji-won. Though she recognizes that he was also a victim of their family's choices, she can't ignore how deeply she feels betrayed. She needs time to rebuild her life and figure out who she is without the shadow of the past. I need some time, Ji-won. I need to stay away from all of this, Ha-eun says, wiping her tears as she slowly walks away from him. Ji-won watches in silence, his heart heavy, as Ha-eun walks away, feeling as though this is a final goodbye. He feels as if his world is crumbling around him, but knows he must respect her need to distance herself. After all, he too will need time to accept the truth and the consequences of his own family's actions. In the days that follow, Ji-won lives through a kind of mourning. He realizes that in his search for the truth, he caused irreparable pain for them both. He thinks of Ha-eun every day, hoping that someday they may find a way to forgive each other and perhaps rebuild a real bond, free from the shadows of the past. Ha-eun, in turn, tries to move on, but the emptiness she feels seems deeper than ever. In her mind, Ji-won's words echo along with the image of the brother she almost had the chance to know. She wants to forget, but senses that it will be impossible to leave the past behind. Deep down, she knows that to truly find peace, one day she will need to face Ji-won again and confront all the conflicting feelings that still linger between them. Months pass since the last time Kim Ji-won and Ha-eun saw each other. Both try to move on, each in their own way, but the painful truth they uncovered and the intense feelings they still carry make this process slow and difficult. Despite the distance, the connection between them remains, as if fate itself keeps them bound. Both know there are wounds that need to heal, and to do so, a reunion seems inevitable. Ha-eun tries to fill the emptiness with a new routine. She starts working in a small bookstore and adopts a quiet life, far from the recent trauma. But the necklace she wears around her neck and the memory of Ji-won never leave her mind. His words echo constantly, and the pain of knowing that her own family abandoned her is mixed with the desire to see him again, the only person who truly shares her history. Ji-won, meanwhile, throws himself into his work, but his usual determination and focus seem to crumble. At every meeting and commitment, he feels the weight of his family's choices and secrets. For the first time, he realizes he must not only confront the past, but also his father, to find redemption and build a different future. Finally, on a cold winter afternoon, Ji-won gathers the courage to go to the bookstore where Ha-eun works. He stands outside watching her through the window. She's busy, stacking books on shelves, and he feels a sharp pang of pain at seeing her so distant. After a moment of hesitation, he steps inside, the sound of the door breaking the stillness of the store. Ha-eun looks up, surprised and emotional to see him there. There's a moment of silence as they exchange an intense look, filled with longing and pain. They walk toward each other, unsure how to begin a conversation they've been waiting for so long. Ha-eun, Ji-won begins, his voice full of regret. I know there are no words to fix what happened, but I had to come. I had to ask for your forgiveness. Ha-eun lowers her eyes, taking a deep breath as if gathering her strength. She finally looks at him, and Ji-won sees something different in her gaze, a painful yet sincere acceptance. I spent a long time trying to understand why, Ji-won, trying to accept that the one person I trusted most and who, in a way, was the only family I found, is the same person who carries the wounds of my past. But no matter how much it hurts, I know you were also a victim of it all. They walk to a table at the back of the store, where they sit side by side in a comforting silence. For the first time, they both feel ready to let their feelings and pains surface without restraint. Ha-eun shares the insecurities and fears that have haunted her throughout her life. Ji-won, in turn, opens up and talks about the guilt and burdens his father always imposed on him, which kept him from ever being truly happy. During their conversation, they realize that despite all the difficulties, they are the only ones who can truly understand what the other has been through. This mutual understanding brings them closer, and they feel that, in some way, they were meant to support each other, even if they cannot undo what has happened. On an impulse, Ha-eun takes Ji-won's hand and says, I don't know how we're going to get past all this, but maybe if we're together, we can start rebuilding what we lost. He squeezes her hand, feeling the warmth and security he has long sought. I think so too, Ha-eun. I want us to start over. Let's seek justice for what was taken from us and find a way to live in peace. Determined to face the past head-on, they plan to confront Ji-won's father and hold him accountable for what happened. Gathering documents and evidence, they bring the case to court, exposing the abandonment and lies that marked their lives. The scandal shakes Korea's business world, and Dong-hyun's reputation is ruined. Finally, they feel that they have done justice to Soo-jin and the lives they could have lived together. At the same time, they realize that true redemption does not lie in revenge, but in forgiveness. After the trial, both feel they can truly leave the past behind. Ha-eun and Ji-won begin to build a new life, no longer as strangers or forbidden lovers, but as siblings, friends, and confidants. In the days that follow, Ha-eun invites him to experience her new routine and meet her friends. Ji-won, in turn, shares with her his ambitions, and they begin to support each other, discovering little by little how good it is to have someone to share dreams and life's challenges with. The following spring, they make a promise. They will never let anyone tear them apart again. From now on, both are determined to honor Soo-jin's memory and live in peace, with the hope of a future where pain will be replaced by a true bond and renewed happiness.